In this series, we explain fundamental enterprise digitalization concepts. This series is mostly based on my textbook Fundamentals of Enterprise Architecture Management and my lecture Enterprise Architecture Management and Enterprise Digitalization at the University of Hanover. This first chapter, Enterprise Architecture Management, in a nutshell, provides a high-level overview of enterprise architecture management and what it is about. Note that the concepts of enterprise architecture and enterprise architecture management now exist since about 30 years. Since then, obviously, the digital world and methods for steering it have developed a lot. Thus, the concept of enterprise architecture management has often been discussed and adjusted in the last decades. However, in the literature from scholars, scientists, and practitioners, today there is a consolidated understanding of the term enterprise architecture management. IT has been used in enterprises now since about 50 years. Initially, its focus was on automating existing processes, efficiency, and doing things right. However, the disruptive digitalization in the last decades has changed this perspective. Today, we recognize that digitalization extends beyond efficiency. Today, it is clear that digitalization is a strategic business topic, opening new markets and new business models. As a result, both the Chief Information Officer, CIO, and the Chief Executive Officer, CEO, of any large enterprise must possess a good understanding of their enterprise-wide digital ecosystem and its potential. This doesn't mean necessarily knowing the intricate details of every application within the organization, but it does mean having at least a holistic grasp of the digital landscape. For example, the CEO and the CIO should be able to answer questions regarding the right degree of modernity. Are the technologies innovative enough to keep and expand competitive advantages for the company? Or do we have too many new fancy technologies while bread and butter business requirements have been neglected? The second point is chaos or order. Is the enterprise-wide digital ecosystem clearly structured, or does it rather resemble a chaotic big ball of mud that nobody can understand and control? Can you easily prove to external auditors that your landscape is compliant with the regulations? Another point is loose coupling and interoperability. Can you efficiently integrate new internal applications, services of a B2B partner, and new applications from mergers and acquisitions? Can you efficiently carve out internal IT services, for example, if parts of the enterprise are sold? The next point is cost efficiency, sourcing strategy, and time to market. Are the IT systems efficiently developed and purchased? Do we have too many vendors or too few, risking a vendor lock-in? The last point is functional and non-functional requirements. Are the IT systems effective from a user's perspective? Are they sufficiently stable, available, secure, and fast? The high-level overview that answers to these strategic questions is called enterprise architecture. Now, what exactly does enterprise architecture mean? A metaphor often used for enterprise architecture is that of city or landscape architecture. Like a city planner, an enterprise architect must think strategically, meaning high level and long term, and plan a complete landscape of systems. Now, of course, instead of train stations, urban residences, and parks, he or she designs the landscape of large applications, middleware, and IT infrastructure. However, the IT landscapes of most large enterprises have developed organically via decades. So, in practice, you hardly ever design an enterprise-wide digital ecosystem on a green field. Thus, a major task for an enterprise architect is the iterative transformation of the ground landscape towards a simpler, harmonized structure. Now, maybe you wonder if every city has an architecture. The answer to this question is yes, every city does have an architecture. Some of these architectures, however, are grown organically. Also, the IT landscapes of most large enterprises have developed organically via decades. Now, from a touristic perspective, a village with many narrow curved streets might be charming. However, from a practical perspective, the digital landscape of a large enterprise should rather not be designed to be mysterious. Instead, the digital landscape of a large enterprise should rather be designed to be transparent and maintained easily. Thus, a major task of an enterprise architect is the iterative transformation of the grown landscape towards a simpler, harmonized structure. So, the goal of enterprise architecture management is a coherent, enterprise-wide optimized digital ecosystem. We do not want to have an enterprise-wide digital ecosystem resembling an organically grown city. In this case, we would have many small heterogeneous building blocks. We would have many elements like, for example, applications, infrastructure elements, data buckets, and we would have too many dependencies between those elements. In a result, we would have too high complexity, low transparency, and low overall agility in our digital ecosystem. If we wanted to change something, if we wanted to alter an element, there would be so many dependencies that this would be very costly. Also, we would have a lot of redundancies, high costs, and due to the points said before, we would have bad security. So what we want to have instead is an enterprise-wide digital ecosystem resembling a design city. Here we would have large, standardized, layered building blocks. We would have fewer elements and dependencies. We would have a coherent, well-integrated overall system. We would have lower system complexity and a higher agility, and we would also have more economies of scale and scope. The latter, for example, because instead of small applications, we would choose large platforms where we could leverage economies of scale. Now let us briefly define enterprise architecture management. As you can see on this slide, the three terms enterprise architecture management, enterprise architecture, and enterprise-wide digital ecosystem build on each other. Let's start with the lowest layer where everything is about the enterprise-wide digital ecosystem. This comprises the enterprise-wide information technology, meaning all software and hardware used in our enterprise. If we have a look at the second term, enterprise architecture, this is defined as the fundamental structure of the enterprise-wide digital ecosystem, comprising its core elements and the relationships between those, as well as the relationships to the environment. Note that this definition is based on the usual understanding of the term architecture in our context, which usually is defined as the fundamental structure of something, the core elements of something. So in this case, we're talking of the fundamental structure, the core of our enterprise-wide digital ecosystem. Building on these definitions, we can now define enterprise architecture management. Enterprise architecture management means the planning, steering, and controlling of the enterprise architecture. Note that unlike the one-time activity of architecting a new house, the architecture of our enterprise-wide digital ecosystem is continuously and iteratively managed. The enterprise architecture is developed in a perpetual lifecycle, iteratively addressing selected areas of the digital ecosystem. Thus, as you can see on the right, we have a typical management lifecycle with the phases envision, specify, implement, and evaluate, and this lifecycle is around our enterprise architecture.